Hey everyone, I'll give an introduction to Peek AI from the perspective of a user. I'm also a former employee of the company. If you want to know more about that story, you can find that on my blog. But let's get started with going through the tool. So right now what you're looking at is the overview tab. This is kind of like the main tab that shows you all your data. We'll get to that in a second, but what I'd like to focus on first is the prompts tab. So I think the prompts tab is most interesting because this is where your data actually comes from. Basically, if you use a tool like Peek AI or Profound or another prompt tracking tool, what happens is you upload your prompts. The tool then runs your prompts against different AI models, depending on which models are in your plan. It finds those chats, and then based on those chats, it records things like your brand mentions. It finds the sources or citations. It measures sentiment. It measures your average position. So we'll get into all of that in a moment. But right now, what we're looking at is 50 prompts that I've selected for my plan here. And now the prompts are divided into different topics. So I selected these topics. I have AI and marketing news, generative engine optimization, holistic SEO, user first SEO. So these are topics that I selected, not necessarily because they represent the AI visibility of my website today, but because these are topics I'm interested in writing content about in the future. So that's a little bit of a different strategy. What I would recommend doing if you're a business is focusing on prompts that cover your main lines of business for the buyer's journeys of your target personas. So let me say that again. So they cover the main lines of business for the buyer's journeys of your target personas. That's what's key about selecting prompts. In terms of like how to come up with prompts, you can talk to your customers directly, look at sales calls. You can go to Reddit and you can see how people are describing your business in Reddit, or you can look at like your keyword data, like in Google Search Console. A lot of different ways to come up with prompts, but it all starts with your prompts. You have to have good quality prompts. They need to address the buyer's journey of your target personas, and they need to pertain to your main lines of business. Otherwise, your visibility numbers will be skewed. So again, we'll start with topics because this is how you organize your prompts. So you can see within each topic, I have like, 3 to 5 to 6 to 8 prompts. A good starting place is like 5 to 10 prompts per topic, I would say. But the more prompts you have, the more variables you're going to cover. So obviously, the more prompts, the better. In my plan right now, I have 50 prompts allotted to me, so that's what I'm using. Um, there's also tags. So we talked about topics. Each prompt can have one topic, but it can have multiple tags. And so in Peak, they automatically assign branding for like branded or non-branded in different intent stages, informational, commercial, transactional. I also added a couple of custom tags for personas. So I have like an expert persona and then a novice persona. Um, you can do tags for like pretty much anything you can think of. You could do it for different geos. Like let's say you serve your business that serves different locations. You could do different cities. You could do it different products or SKUs. You can market comparison prompts. I've seen some pretty interesting use cases with tags, so you can definitely get creative because it's all about filtering your data later, which we'll get into. Um, and of course, you can always add prompts, get suggested prompts, or you can add prompts over here. I won't go into that too much, but if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I can help you with that. Um, let's jump to the overview tab because this is kind of like the high level view of our data. So basically, what we're seeing is the visibility numbers for all of my tracked prompts against competitors. In this case, they're not really competitors. They're just brands I selected because I have like respect for their content and I want to see what they're publishing and what they're up to. So, but in your case, if you're a brand or you're an agency working with clients, then you would have, your true competitors in here. Be paying attention to their visibility numbers. So we can see for all of the prompts I'm tracking across all the models, across all the tags for the last 30 days, that my visibility is 1%. Um, and then we can see like SEMrush is a leader here with 11% visibility. But that's across all the models, all the topics, and all the tags. And so one thing we do know is that model behavior differs. ChatGPT operates differently than how AI Overviews is going to operate, for example. So what we want to do is we want to filter our data to get started because ultimately what we want to do is we want to take action. We want to find the sources that are influencing the chats that we care about, and we want to take action. Speaking of which, let me just kind of side step for a moment and show you what a chat looks like. So this is a chat. You can see these are sources on the side. So sources are not the same thing as citations necessarily. Citations are links actually in the chat. Sources are URLs that influence that chat as sources. This one doesn't have any brand mentions, so let's find one that has brand mentions. Here we go. This one should have a brand mention. Yep, there we go. Mention SEMrush, so you can see it's highlighted, and you can see that brand is mentioned up here as being mentioned. So that's what a chat looks like. Let's go back to filtering. So what's important with filtering is we can filter by tags. So we can filter by like, let's say like non-branded, and then let's do informational only. Oops. So I also wanted non-branded. Yep, there we go. So we have two tags selected. So we have non-branded and informational prompts. Now let's choose a model. So you can see I'm tracking three models here. I have ChatGPT, AI overviews, and AI mode. There's also other models available if I wanted to like upgrade. So like if I was a B2B business, I might be interested in Claude, for example. Gemini is another one. I think those are the big four. So ChatGPT, AI overviews, AI mode, and Gemini. Those are kind of the big four in my opinion. I'm going to focus on AI overviews. And then let's select the topic. So I happen to know that the topic that I have the most visibility in is this holistic SEO topic because I actually have content that's written about that. And if I select that topic, you can see my visibility goes to 3%, as opposed to 1% overall. But let's say we wanted to take action. Let's say we wanted to find sources and take action. So maybe let's select another topic like generative engine optimization. There I have a visibility of 0%. So how would we take action? So we can scroll down a little bit and we can see like, here are the top domains contributing sources to these chats that are triggered by the prompts in my generative engine optimization topic. So obviously YouTube is a big one. Google, I'd have to dig into exactly what that is. Reply.com, Medium, Directive Consulting, SEMrush. So these are kind of the top domains. And then we can look at domain types. So we can see that there's corporate, UGC, editorial, reference, other, competitor, and institutional. So basically, based on the domain type, that determines what sort of actions I would take. So for corporate sites, I might get inspired by their content, and that might be like what I do with my own content. I might write content similar to what I see. So it'd be like an owned content strategy. Or I could reach out potentially for like partnerships. If these corporate sites aren't direct competitors of mine, I could reach out and potentially do a partnership, do like a guest post or try and contribute maybe like a video or do a podcast or something. With UGC, I can take inspiration from what's kind of like being retrieved, and then I could create like content like that on my own channels. So like YouTube, for example, or LinkedIn. You'll probably see Reddit a lot as well. Those are sort of the big three: YouTube, LinkedIn, and Reddit. Editorial sites, I actually just wrote an article about how to approach this on my blog. But basically, you do things like digital PR, so you contribute like original research and then try and get that covered by publications. You could reach out to journalists to try and get coverage, or you could actually pay for advertorials. A lot of the listicles you see that's like best of listicles, a lot of those are like pay to play, where a lot of the brands getting mentioned are incentivized somehow to be included, or they're like self-serving, which is another topic altogether. Reference sites, so that's like Wikipedia, for example, or other reference sites. But basically, you want to make sure that you're in those, that your information is accurate, and you can either influence that directly or potentially indirectly. Others, its own category. You kind of got to look into and see what the sources are there. Competitor, that's another one where you take it for like your own content strategy. You see what competitors are publishing, where you have gaps, or maybe where you have existing pieces that could use improvement, and you focus on those. So again, let's say we want to take action right now. So we're on the overview tab. Let's go to the all domains. So right now, again, we're looking at the two tags I selected, which was informational and non-branded. We're looking at AI overviews, and we're looking at generative engine optimization prompts specifically. So if we scroll down here, we can see these are the, oops, I have a filter on. Let me remove that. So these are the top domains. So we have YouTube, we have Google, we have Reply, we have Medium. So basically what we can do is we can click in to these. So like, let's say YouTube, for example, click in, scroll down here, I can see like the top videos described here, or I can see them down here as well. But basically I'd want to like understand, what are these videos doing? What are they talking about? We can see kind of a breakdown here of like, there's some how-to, these are videos, so it's a little bit odd to call them like an article, but how-to, listicles. So like basically instructional content on GEO. If we go back to domains, let's look at another one that maybe has some publishing. Let's go to SEMrush. So here we see clearly there's one article that's getting, we can look at the retrievals here and we can see that this one's getting the most retrievals by a lot. So this is a pretty popular article for these prompts that I'm tracking, and it's basically just a GEO guide. So I think that's like one of the takeaways here that I'm seeing is like a lot of general information, general guides are kind of what's triggering for the prompts that I'm tracking. Couple of options here. So I am looking at domains right now. So there's also an ability to look at just URLs. So these are just the highest retrieved URLs for those prompts that I'm tracking. Again, we see YouTube, but then we see like 11 generative engine optimization best practices. Again, just sort of like general GEO guides, best practices, what is GEO, GEO 2026 guide. So I think one thing I'm noticing here is like the prompts I have, they're not just generic, what is GEO advice. Actually, I might have some of those. So let's check it out. So these are the prompts I'm actually tracking. So I do have like, what is generative engine optimization? So I'm sure like a lot of those guides are relevant to this, and we can click into it and we can check out the URLs here. And we see like generative engine optimization, geo definition, how to optimize for generative AI search engines. It is a little different though. I'm not seeing like that YouTube video from earlier, so I'd have to like dig in and see what prompt specifically that one is related to. But I guess what I'm getting at is my prompts are a little bit specific. So like compare different methodologies for effective GEO across various AI search models, assess the long-term value of integrating GEO into a broader digital marketing strategy. So my prompts are a little bit specific, but the content I'm seeing is pretty general. So that kind of leaves an opening. Like if I wanted to create contents more specific to these prompts and to like the intent behind them, I could potentially do it that way as well. So we've talked about a couple of methods here to take action. One of them is to look at what the sources are today and kind of take inspiration from that. So it'd be like some sort of general GEO video or guide. Or we can look at specific prompts and say like, people haven't written about something specific to this yet. We could do that. And I actually did do that. I wrote an article related to this prompt in particular. This was only a day or so ago, so I don't think it's not going to be showing up yet, but I'll keep an eye on that. Um, but I think that's the important thing to remember is like how to take action. And you take action by looking at the sources. You take action by understanding what the types of sources are, what the domain types are, and not copying those, but taking inspiration from them. So if you see a lot of video content, if you see a lot of LinkedIn content, if you see a lot of Reddit content, that kind of gives you an idea of like which direction to go into. Um, there's also a fan out section. So if you're not familiar with fan outs, basically when you put a prompt into an AI assistant, it doesn't search that prompt verbatim. It breaks it down into subqueries, which are called fan out queries, and they basically just cover different lines of intent. So what you can do is in this case, I have ChatGPT as one of my models. So I'm seeing the query fan outs from ChatGPT. So these do appear to be filtered, so that's good. So like if we look at the based on the topic, so if we look at like the fan out queries, it's like GEO impact on organic search traffic. What is GEO? GEO methodologies, AI search models. So what we could do is there is this common phrases which shows us like terms that the most frequent word sequences across query fanouts. So we could take inspiration from this, but what I like to do is actually just export the query fanouts and then upload them to like Claude or another AI assistant, and then ask it basically like for content ideas, like basically find the main themes in my query fanouts and then give me content ideas based on that. Because ultimately, what you're trying to do is be relevant for the query fanouts, because those are what are being used to find grounding sources for the chats. Um, what else can I tell you about? Again, this video is unscripted, so let's talk about crawlability, because I think that's another important detail. Um, so basically, your content to be eligible to be a source, it needs to be basically indexed in a search engine, preferably, Google or Brave if it's Claude. But this shows you whether or not your content is accessible by these bots. Basically, different types of bots. So there's training bots, user query, which is like at the time of a prompt. Um, and then I think there's search bots, but I see other here. Oh, there's the search bots right here. And you can see that mine are partially blocked because my robots.txt blocks like internal search pages and a couple of other pages that aren't necessary for search results. But you don't want to check that. You want to check like, are these bots allowed to visit your content? And if not, what's the reason for that? Is it intentional or unintentional? And then you can kind of like take action from there. Um, there also are these actions. So like there's earned and owned content strategies suggestions. So like if I went to earn, for example, this is going to like look at like the sources for the chats that I have, and it's going to give me suggestions of like, create or reach out to this publisher to try and get mentioned or whatever it is. Yeah, so it says get featured in search engine land. Their how-to guides are regularly cited by LLMs. So that's pretty generic advice, but it's good advice. Like it's sound. That is something I'd want to do if I was trying to improve my AI visibility for these prompts. So take a look at these suggestions. I wouldn't follow them blindly, but I would, take inspiration from them, especially when it comes to earned media, because I feel like there is this whole debate about SEO versus GEO and are they really different? I do see a difference. I do think GEO is like an evolution on SEO. And I do think that a big part of that is the earned media strategy. So in SEO, it was, like backlinks were important, for example. But in GEO, earned media strategies and getting third party mentions and getting consistent information about your brand throughout the web and all these different places is super important. It sounds foundational, and it is, but it's super important, and it can be difficult, especially if you're like a larger brand, um, publishing in a lot of different places from different teams. So again, just to kind of recap everything, the data starts with your prompts. So focus on having great prompts that cover the buyer's journeys of your target personas and address your main lines of business. Organize those by topics, and then have tags so you can easily like filter your data and then you can take action. To take action, you can monitor your visibility score on the overview tab, but really it's all about the sources. So you click into the domains or you click into the URLs and you look at like what the sources are relevant for those chats that you care about. And then you try and influence those sources through your own media or an earned media strategy. Um, One other thing I'll show you is Insights tab. So this is like for reporting purposes, because I think if you're doing this for a client or you're doing this like for an internal team and you need to do some reporting, there's this kind of neat feature here called Performance Matrix where you can customize the X and Y axes based on what you're trying to demonstrate. So for example, I showed different topics here by model, and you can see that like, again, I use this mostly for like brainstorming content, so it's not necessarily representative of my visibility. But you can see like for the content I do have, holistic SEO is where I'm strongest, and I am strongest in Google's properties. Whereas in ChatGPT, I have work to do. And then these other topics, I obviously have work to do as well. Um, I think that's about it. I will call out the brands tab just because, just like you want to set up your prompts correctly, you want to set up your competitors correctly. Or in my case, these are sites that I take inspiration from because I just like their content. So it kind of depends on how you're using the tool. But for most people, you'll want your competitors to be chosen correctly. And they'll be suggested for you based on the chats, but you can also add competitors yourself. It's important to get the track name correct because that's what will actually be looked for in the chats. As I mentioned, is the track name, not the display name. So just make sure that that's accurate as well. And again, I'm using Peec AI here, but you can also use Profound or another prompt tracking tool. The fundamentals of what I'm talking about here still apply pretty broadly. I'll do some future videos as well, kind of going into like more in-depth sections of like different sections of the tool and going more in depth. But for now, this has kind of just been a general overview. If you have any questions or you need a hand with anything, feel free to reach out to me. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.